The murder of Vanessa Guillén shocked the nation of Texas and beyond. Vanessa was 20 years old and a United States Army soldier stationed at Fort Hood in Texas. She was murdered inside an armory at Fort Hood on April 22, 2022, where she was bludgeoned to death by another soldier, later identified as Aaron David Richardson, after an extensive battle from the family and public to get investigators to further look into the case. Vanessa was born in Houston, Texas, and has 5 other siblings. She played soccer, loved to jog, and enjoyed sports and learning. She then joined the Army in June 2018 and trained as a 91F small arms and artillery repairer. Aaron was 20 years old as well and originated from Calumet City, Illinois. He joined the US Army in October 2017 and trained as a 12B combat engineer. Vanessa was last seen around 1 p.m. on April 22, 2020 in the parking lot of her unit. Her car keys, identification card, bank card, and barracks key were found inside the armory where she worked. Her family felt she disappeared under suspicious circumstances. They knew her through and through, and this wasn't like her at all. The case was investigated under the jurisdiction of the US Army Criminal Investigation Command and the FBI, with the local enforcement agencies in Bell County, Guillén, and Belton, including the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, the US Marshal Service, and the Texas Ranger Division. The search began within 2 weeks of her disappearance. Before Vanessa disappeared, she had told her family about issues that she was having at Fort Hood, namely that she was being sexually harassed by an unnamed sergeant at Fort Hood, and that complaints by other female soldiers had been made against that sergeant, and they were dismissed. Her mother advised her to report the matter, but she responded that she could put a stop to it herself, out of fear that her mother would be harmed for making a report. In early June, her mother told reporters that she did not trust the Army handling the investigation, and her attorney, Natalie Cohen, said she believed the family was being kept in the dark because only a few details had been released regarding Vanessa's disappearance. On June 13, 2020, hundreds of people assembled at the gates of Fort Hood to protest the lack of information on the case. The US Army CID reported that they found no evidence that Vanessa was assaulted, but said that investigators believed foul play was involved in her disappearance. On June 17th, the League of United Latin American Citizens added an additional $25,000 to the reward announced by the Army for finding Vanessa. On June 23rd, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia met with Fort Hood officials to discuss the ongoing search. The authorities said that more than 300 interviews and over 10,000 hours were spent investigating her disappearance. On June 30th, 2020, Army investigators were called in when contractors discovered partial human remains along the Leon River in Belton. The area had previously been searched by Texas Rangers, detectives, cadaver dogs on June 20th after a burn mound was discovered nearby. Investigators theorized that the remains, previously buried under concrete, had been dug up by wildlife. Tim Miller, director of Texas EquuSearch, stated that it was the most sophisticated burial site he had ever seen. Later that evening, around 8:30 p.m., authorities had re-interviewed Cecily Ann Aguilar, a local woman who was the estranged wife of a soldier at Fort Hood. She was reported to be the girlfriend of Aaron, a specialist-ranked enlisted soldier who was one of the last known people to have seen Vanessa on the day of her disappearance and who had previously been interviewed by investigators. Cecily told police that Aaron had confessed to her that he had killed a female soldier at Fort Hood. At the request of law enforcement, she placed a controlled telephone call to Aaron, who said, "Baby, they found pieces," and texted Aaron multiple news articles to which he never denied anything in response. According to a criminal complaint filed in the Western District Court of Texas, Cecily allegedly helped Aaron dismember and dispose of Vanessa's body on April 22, 2020, after Aaron had told her he had bludgeoned Vanessa to death with a hammer inside the armory. On the evening of June 20th, he escaped the custody of an unnamed guard from his unit and fled Fort Hood after hearing the news of the discovery of remains. He had been detained by his unit at the request of a CID agent under the pretense of violating COVID-19 quarantine rules. In the early hours of July 1st, Guillén police located and attempted to make contact with Aaron, who produced a handgun and killed himself before he could be taken into custody. Cecily was arrested by Texas Rangers and held at the Bell County Jail. On July 2nd, Bell County officials stated she would be transferred to federal custody due to being charged with one count of conspiracy to tamper with evidence by the United States Attorney's Office in the Western District of Texas. On May 24th, the Texas Department of Public Safety released a report stating Cecily later explained why had Aaron killed Vanessa, saying Vanessa saw his cell phone lock screen, which contained a picture of her. Aaron told her he was worried about getting into trouble for violating the Army's fraternization rules since she was still married to another soldier, and he hit Vanessa in the head with a hammer. The timeline for this case is as follows. April 22nd. According to law enforcement, Vanessa is murdered with a hammer inside an armory by Aaron, who then uses a truck to remove her body from Fort Hood and gets help from Cecily in dismembering the remains before burying them along the Guillén River. April 23rd. CID was notified by a commissioned officer in the 3CR Provost Marshal that Vanessa was reported. April 24th. CID issues a missing soldier letter for Vanessa. Fort Hood Military Police issues a BOLO advisory to surrounding law enforcement agencies. Military personnel along with civilian and military police began a search. April 26th. According to law enforcement tracking of cell phone data, both Aaron and Cecily returned to the Guillén River site and further break down Vanessa's remains. April 28th. CID interviews Aaron for the first time. April 30th. Secretary of the Army Ryan McCarthy makes the following statement in a COVID-19 briefing. I'd like to start out this morning by talking about a missing soldier, Private First Class Vanessa Guillén, in hopes of increasing the public's awareness and assistance in finding her. Private First Class Vanessa Guillén went missing on April 22nd from Fort Hood, Texas. In concert with local law enforcement efforts, the Army will continue aggressively searching for her. Our hearts go out to her family, and we will not stop looking for her until we find her. May 18th. 2 witnesses are interviewed who observed Aaron struggling with a tough box outside the armory. May 19th. Aaron consents to a search of his cell phone by law enforcement using a universal forensic extraction device product. June 19th. Cecily is interviewed for the first time. June 21st. Cell phone data from both Aaron and Cecily's phones led law enforcement officials to an area near the Guillén River. Law enforcement officials located the burned lid of a Pelican transport case, but failed to find a body. June 30th. At about 1 p.m, contractors working on a fence near the Guillén River discover partial human remains that would later be confirmed to be Vanessa and notified law enforcement. CID and partnered agencies discovered the human remains. At about 8:30, Cecily was interviewed again and told the law enforcement officials about the killing. Aaron fled Fort Hood at this point. July 1st. In the early hours shortly after midnight, Aaron killed himself in Guillén. July 2nd, FBI formally submits a criminal complaint for Cecily. Fort Hood and CID hold a press briefing. July 5th, remains are confirmed to be of Vanessa Guillén. July 10th, US Secretary Ryan McCarthy announced that he would order a full independent review of the case. July 13th, Cecily is indicted on 11 counts relating to the death of Vanessa Guillén by a federal grand jury. July 30th. Vanessa Guillén's family meet with President Donald Trump, who emphasized to the family that the case would be fully and independently reviewed. December 8th. Following the independent review, Ryan McCarthy announced in a Pentagon press briefing that 14 senior officers from corps to squad level were disciplined for leadership failures. November 29th, 2022. Cecily, 24 at the time, pleaded guilty in a federal court in Waco, Texas, to 1 count of accessory to murder after the fact and 3 counts of making a false statement, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And that's it for today. Let me know what you thought of the video down below, and I'll see you for the next one.